Good evening, members, charity trustees, and welcome to the first meeting of Mid Sussex Charity Trustees for the council year 21-22. We are meeting virtually, given that the COVID is very much still with us. The advice from the Charity Commission is to meet virtually, and also, of course, all members haven't had the opportunity to have their second vaccination to date. As with all virtual meetings, I'll start with a roll call. Councillor Allen.
Present.
Councillor Ash Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Bates. Councillor John Belsey.
Present.
Councillor Margaret Belsey.
Present.
Councillor Alison Bennett.
Present.
Councillor Liz Bennett.
Present.
Councillor Anne Boutrop. Councillor Bradbury.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Brunsden. Councillor Cartwright.
Present.
Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Gogunner-White. Councillor Cornish.
Present.
Councillor Cromie. Councillor Cromie. Councillor DeBell.
Present.
Councillor Demir.
Present.
Councillor Dempsey. Councillor Eggleston.
Present.
Councillor Ellis. Councillor Eaves.
Present.
Councillor Forbes.
Present.
Councillor Gibbs.
Present.
Councillor Gibson.
Present.
Councillor Hatton.
Present.
Councillor Henwood.
Present.
Councillor Hicks.
Present.
Councillor Hillier.
Present.
Councillor Hussain.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Knight.
Present.
Councillor Band.
Present.
Councillor Andrew Lee.
He sends apologies.
Councillor Anthea Lee.
Present.
Councillor Judy Llewellyn-Burke.
Present.
Councillor Marsh.
Present.
Councillor Mockford.
Present.
Councillor Peacock.
Present.
Councillor Phillips. Councillor Porfer.
Present.
Councillor Salisbury.
Present.
Councillor Sparashi.
Present.
Councillor Stockwell.
Present.
Councillor Swetman.
Present.
Councillor Trumbull.
Present.
Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker. Councillor Webb. Councillor Webster.
Present.
And Councillor Whitaker.
Present.
This is now indicated, Tom.
Councillor Bates.
Yes, I eventually have arrived, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Our first task this evening is to elect a chairman of the charity trustees. So could I ask for nominations, please? Councillor Ash Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. I'd like to nominate Councillor Margaret Belsey as Chairman of the Trustees.
And is there a seconder, please? Councillor Llewellyn-Burke.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to second the nomination.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for chairman of the charity trustees? Seeing none, I hand over to Councillor Margaret Belsey.
Thank you. And now we have to move on to the appointment of a vice chairman. I'd like to put forward the nomination of Councillor Robert Salisbury, and I would ask if I have a seconder for that nomination, please. Thank you, Councillor Ash Edwards. Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chairman? I see none. So I would like to appoint Councillor Robert Salisbury as vice chairman of this meeting. Thank you. So we're moving on, please, to item 4, to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of September. Can I ask if there are any queries? Could they please raise their hands to indicate that they have a query to ask or a question to ask? I can't see any hands raised. So if I may, then we move on to an e-vote. And would you all please use your yes, no buttons? You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now.
Chairman, if you don't mind me interrupting, I would like to support that vote, but I can't find my yes and no at the moment.
Thank you.
I was going to say the same, Chairman. I can't see a yes or no vote on my screen.
Down the bottom.
Okay.
Right, it's not there.
It's in the reactions tab, Chairman.
It's in the reactions, if you have that.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
It's carried.
That motion is carried.
Sorry to interrupt, Chairman. Just noticed 2 more people have come online, and one was trying to send me a text to say they did answer, but it didn't seem to come through. Councillor Cromie's here and Councillor Walker's here, I believe.
Okay. I'm not sure now the vote has taken place, whether I just take some advice on that.
Chairman, I've noted it on the attendance sheet.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. And that's now been noted. So we move on to item 5, to receive declaration of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Please, members who wish to declare an interest, could they indicate via the raised hand function? I see none. So we're going to move on to item 6, to consider any items that the chairman of the charity trustees agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. So now I'm going to move on to item 7. Sorry, it's item 6, to consider any items. We've done that. So we're moving on to item 7. The Beechhurst Gardens Charitable Trust, Hayward Heath, West Sussex, works to install fencing around the bowling green. I'm now going to invite the Head of Regulatory Services, Tom Clark, to speak. He will introduce both the 2 following items on Beechhurst.
Thank you, Chairman. As members will recall, the Beechhurst charity is really the only one that generates its own money. It does have money to do quite a lot of things. And before you tonight are 2 reports, both involving monies over 10,000, which is why they come to you. The first one is to install fencing around the bowling green to stop future damage to the green that's been happening, necessitating additional repairs. And the second one is to join with some other tennis facilities so that there is a proper control on the access to the courts. So people who have booked them will find the courts vacant when they get there. and will have a code to get into the courts. So both are thought to improve the facilities at Beechhurst, and they're recommended to the trustees tonight, Chairman.
Fine, thank you very much. Have we got any questions or comments on this motion? Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chairman. Beechhurst falls within my ward and Councillor Demere's ward. Very much support both applications. We've had occasion to meet the people from the bowling club and very much support the fencing there, which is very much needed in terms of giving them privacy in terms of playing their game, stopping dogs running on people, jumping on the bowling green, etc. So I give it my full support. Thank you.
Thank you. I will point out we're going to take these items as separate items. The vote will be taken on each of the items.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Henwood.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Referring to item 3.4, I am a frequent user of St. John's tennis courts. I am very concerned about once these electronic access gates are installed at St. John's, how will I access them? At the moment, I simply have a code number, which, you know, I just remember. How will I access? Am I going to have to use a smartphone or what? I'm concerned about accessing when we have these electronic access gates. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, I don't personally know the response to that. Councillor Darcy, have you got the raised? Are you raising your hand to answer or have you a question?
I'm raising my hand to answer, if that's okay, Chairman.
Thank you.
If it's based on the same electronic gate access as in John Pear's, Councillor Henwood, you will receive an email when you make a booking which has got the code, and there'll simply be a number pad at the gate that you type that code into, which will work from about 10 minutes before the booking till about 5 minutes after the booking, and the whole period in between time. And you won't need to have a smartphone to be able to access the gates. It's working very well in John Pear's.
Thank you, Councillor Darcy. Can I move on to Councillor Demere?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to second what Councillor Knight said about the bowling club and the fences. As he rightly says, it has been damaged in the past, but I fully support it because as Councillor Knight has said, we've met with them several times and they are looking to improve themselves, what they do, because at the moment they're only able to play from mid-April to September, and they're hoping to extend so they can play over the winter to make even it more available to more of the community. So I'm fully in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I move on to Councillor Hillier, please?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm supportive of this. Just, I'm not sure if anybody here can answer the question. Just, and it's great that we've consulted with the Bowls Club on the fencing. Just if there's any assurance that, as well as obviously doing the job, is it going to be robust? Because we just know, being located where it is, it's people are likely to climb over it, be it to fetch footballs or in the middle of the night, etc. Is it a robust fence that will stand the test of time? Thank you.
Well, I can see that Councillor Demere is nodding. Are you actually able to answer the question for Councillor Hillier?
Well, I'm sure Councillor Belsey could give you chapter and verse, but it will be the same as the fencing in other parts of the park. So it is park, whatever the expression is. So it stood up in the rest of the park where there is fencing. So I don't think there's a problem.
So fairly robust. Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up. So if we may, we'll go to the vote. The recommendation is the charity trustees are recommended to authorise the use of the trust's funds to install fencing around the bowling green at Beechhurst Gardens. Members, please vote using the yes/no buttons. So we're now proceeding to the e-vote on the recommendations. You have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now.
In favour, Chairman.
Okay, I now declare that you have voted. There were 41 in favour. I didn't catch how many were against, but we obviously the motion is carried with 41. The recommendation is therefore agreed. So we're now moving on to item 8, which is Beechhurst Garden Charitable Trust, Haywards Heath, West Sussex, works to install electronic access gates for the tennis court. Is this the one we've just done? We've done the bowling, so now we're doing the tennis court. So has anyone got any questions on this?
Councillor Brown.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this looks a very sensible approach. I'd like to know if the existing utilisation of the courts has been recorded, and so that the trustees can be advised of the success of the scheme, in that more people are enabled to play tennis. Can that be confirmed? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, obviously, as a booking system, I'm sure that is the case, but I will confirm it with Councillor Belsey, if I may. I think Councillor Belsey, you're muted.
Right, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we do keep records of all the bookings. One of the key points, I think, from this is that at the moment, if you know the code, you can go on the court and use the courts even if you haven't booked them. With the new system in place, it will stop that, as you will need to have booked the courts to be able to access, to enter into the keypad. And so it will be much easier to keep track of bookings and utilisation. But I can see from John Pear's perspective that the utilisation rate is going up already.
Fine, I don't see any other hands up. So if we move to the recommendation, the recommendation being voted for is Beechhurst Gardens Charitable Trust works to install electronic access gates for the tennis courts access. We're going to do it by yes/no buttons. Now we'll proceed to the e-vote on the recommendations that I have just read. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now.
In favour, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm now able to tell you there were 41 votes in favour, so the motion is carried. Thank you very much. I'm going to conclude this meeting at 19:03, and I'd like to ask you all to remain in place while a whole screen is put up on the live stream, and then wait to 7 o'clock. In fact, we will be immediately starting the main council agenda. So if you please remain in situ. Thank you very much. Right. Good evening, councillors, and welcome to this, my first full council meeting as chairman. I'm pleased to see the management team and Office of the Democratic Services are with us. Thank you very much. So I'm going to pass immediately on to my vice chairman, Councillor Robert Salisbury, to perform the roll call, please, Robert.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're all familiar with the process now as I go through the names. Councillor Allen, please.
Present.
Councillor Ash Edwards.
Present.
Councillor Bates.
Present.
Councillor John Belsey.
Present.
Councillor Margaret Belsey, we've just been speaking to.
Present.
Councillor Bennett, please.
Present.
Councillor Liz Bennett.
Present.
Councillor Boutrop. Councillor Boutrop. Councillor Bradbury.
Present.
Councillor Brown.
Present.
Councillor Brunsden. Councillor Brunsden. Councillor Cartwright.
Present.
Councillor Chapman.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Cogunner-White. Councillor Coote. Councillor Cornish.
Present.
Councillor Cromie.
I hope you can hear me. Present.
Thank you. Councillor de Bell.
Present.
Councillor Demir.
Present.
Councillor Dempsey. Councillor Dempsey. Councillor Eggleston.
Present.
Councillor Ellis. Councillor Ellis. Councillor Eaves, please.
Present.
Councillor Forbes.
Present.
Councillor Gibbs.
Present.
Councillor Gibson.
Present.
Councillor Hatton.
Present.
Councillor Henwood.
Present.
Councillor Hicks.
Present.
Councillor Hillier.
Present.
Councillor Hussain.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Knight.
Present.
Councillor Laban.
Present.
Councillor Andrew Lee.
He sends apologies.
Thank you. Councillor Anthea Lee.
Present.
Councillor Llewellyn Burke.
Present.
Councillor Marsh.
Present.
Councillor Mockford.
Present.
Councillor Peacock.
Present.
Councillor Phillips.
Present.
Councillor Pulfer.
Present.
Councillor Salisbury, here I am. Councillor Smith, we have apologies. Councillor Spiraci.
Present.
Councillor Stockwell.
Present.
Councillor Sweetman.
Present.
Councillor Trumbull.
Present.
Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker.
He is present.
Yes, I can see him. Can't hear him. Councillor Webb. Councillor Webb. Councillor Webster. Councillor Webster.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Present.
And that completes the roll call, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I am now going to call on the Head of Regulatory Services, Tom Clark, to explain the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. This meeting is being held virtually, given that some members will not have had the opportunity to have a second vaccination, and also members will have noted the COVID numbers are rather high at the moment. So for public health reasons, we are meeting virtually.
Thank you. We're now going to say the prayer. So I call on the Vice Chairman, Councillor Robert Salisbury, to read us the prayer, please.
Thank you. O Lord, grant us courage to strive for what is right and good, courtesy to listen to those of different opinion, strengthen us through difficulties and pressures, and guide us in our deliberations so that we may act in the interests of all in our district, to the glory of your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Salisbury. I now would like to ask all members, in fact, I'm going to announce a minute's silence for Councillor Andrew McNaughton. If you would join me in that, I'd be grateful. Thank you. Thank you. We all councillors know the high esteem that we all held Councillor McNaughton, and I'm going to invite tributes from a couple of people. Firstly, I'm going to ask the leader if he would like to pay a tribute to Councillor McNaughton, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's very hard to do justice in a few moments to Andrew's service and the contribution that he made to Mid Sussex, but I will do my best, and I've also got some words from Jane, Andrew's widow, that she's asked me to share with the council as well. Andrew will be a very great loss to the district council and to Mid Sussex. He served continuously as a councillor since 1987 and was by some margin the longest serving district councillor that we had. I know that councillors and officers at the council will remember Andrew very fondly. I think most particularly as someone who was in public service for the right reasons. He was a very kind and decent man, and a fantastic sense of humour, and someone who was very willing to share his expertise and his experience. And having served with him in a number of cabinet teams, was a highly valued and collegiate member of the cabinet. Legacy is a very overused word, but I think your real legacy can often be underappreciated, and Andrew's legacy in Mid Sussex will be very significant. Given Andrew's roles as a planning committee chairman and then more recently as the portfolio holder for planning, Andrew has been involved in shaping almost every strategic development in our district over the last couple of decades, and in particular through steering through the adoption of the district plan. And many of those projects that he has been involved in some way will continue to play out over many years to come still. But I think it's his work on affordable housing that's probably the most noteworthy, because it has genuinely helped improve the lives of some of the most vulnerable residents in our community, the people who keep things going in their communities, but are often priced out of that same area. Andrew was passionate about affordable housing and ensuring that more people had the opportunity to live locally in a home that they could afford. And he championed policies around affordable housing delivery on temporary accommodation, for example. He was the lead member pushing for the investment that we've made in recent years in temporary accommodation to improve the provision for people who are sadly made homeless. And I think he's made a very real difference in that, in a genuine sense. And I think it's a true marker of that there are people in our community tonight who do not yet know that they will be moving into an affordable home in our district that Andrew was instrumental in ensuring will be built. And so he can rest very proud of his work in Mid Sussex, and we will ensure that his service is appropriately marked in his community. We will miss him very much. I want to just share some words from Andrew's widow, Jane, and she's given me some words to read out as follows. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to reflect briefly on Andrew's years as a member of the council. Andrew was exceptionally lucky in having an electorate that enabled him to represent Slatham and then Ardingly and Balcombe for 34 years, quite an achievement. Local government, it seems to me, moves exceedingly slowly, and you need to be stubborn, pragmatic, persistent, and above all patient. But if the project is a good one, you can achieve a successful outcome. And if not successful first time, look for a different approach and try again. Andrew never wanted to be the leader or the chairman. He wanted the freedom to pursue his interests in planning and housing, plodding along quietly in the background one step at a time. He was always a team player. His achievements were made possible because he had the support of a succession of leaders, colleagues and officers in the council. He didn't always agree with other points of view and would have his say, quite forcefully on occasion, but would accept that he couldn't always have his own way. Others were entitled to their opinion and one had to respect that. He would say, if you stick your head above the parapet, which he did regularly, expect to get shot at. You cannot please everyone. Do not promise what you can't deliver, and don't be afraid to ask if you don't understand. After 34 years, he would still have to ask. Things change and you are always learning. If that makes him sound ordinary, he wasn't. He had a wicked sense of humour, a twinkle in his eye, and was never intentionally unkind. Last year, while Andrew was shielding, the support from his colleagues and officers really made life easier for him. It gave him something to focus on, and it was really appreciated. I think this is a bit of an understatement to say we all had a really dreadful year, so let us look forward and hope the new normal is not too different to the one we were all used to. Finally, I would like to thank you all for the support you have given me and our family over these last few very difficult weeks. Words from Jane McNaughton there. And Chairman, perhaps I could just conclude by also on behalf of the council thanking Jane as well, because public service involves more than just those of us here tonight. It draws in our families and the people we're closest to, whether it's attending events, driving around doing site visits for planning committees, or just because we talk about issues or have a bit of a moan, or indeed tolerate when another evening meeting goes in the diary. And for many decades, Jane has been at Andrew's side and has supported his work as a councillor fully, and I know has followed the journey on many important pieces of work. I remember Jane being in the gallery for a lot of the district plan examination hearings following that piece of work that Andrew had worked so hard on, and I know she was watching on for much of the site allocations hearings recently as well. So on behalf of all of us, Jane, thank you for everything you've done too in allowing Andrew to discharge those roles for so many years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Echo everything you said. It was excellent, and I'm sure all our feelings were shared by your words. I'd now like to ask Councillor Marsh, who is not only a fellow councillor, but a good friend of Andrew, and if you would like to pay a tribute to him.
Thank you, Chairman. Very good, nice, kind words from the leader, Councillor Ash Edwards. I shall come from a slightly personal side of it. I first met Andrew late 2002, as the leader just adhered to, that he was a member for Slatham, but he and I were the first members of the newly created Ardingly and Balcombe, so I got to know him well. And for the next sort of plus 18 years, we worked together seamlessly. You know, he was like the big brother I never really had. Yes, we argued. Yes, we didn't always agree. But we always parted as friends, so much so that a whole group of us would socialise on a regular basis. And I was really proud to call him a friend and a colleague. And even in this dreadful time we've just had when we were both children, we were still trying to help the residents of our ward when they contact us over issues. Obviously, we couldn't go and visit them, we couldn't, but you know, the power of the telephone and the power of the email, we managed to sort out the vast majority. I shall miss him dreadfully. I will miss him dreadfully, because after every meeting, planning meeting, we used to pick up the phone and chew over the cud. it was quite amusing bumping into them when they were doing their site visits, when we were allowed to do site visits. I remember once down in the southern part of the district, I think it's Sussex Ward, no, actually I think it's Hurst Ward, that we had a tented place up in Pycombe. And I turned up, Andrew turned up in his 4x4, and I looked there and I was thinking, there's no way my learner car is going to go up there. And he went up there and he said, yeah, it's all right, Gary. So I had to walk all the way up there, as opposed, because he was up and gone before I could say, can I come in? And he was gone. So I shall miss him dreadfully, and the wisdom, and as the leader said, he did have a twinkle in his eye, and yeah, it's a sad loss for me and a sad loss for the council, but more importantly, it's a sad loss for the residents of not just our ward, but the whole of the district. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. Is there anyone else in particular who would like to say a few words? Otherwise, we will move on. Councillor Cartwright, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I'd like to make a personal statement about Andrew McNaughton, and also on behalf of my party. I was shocked by the news, and I've worked with Councillor McNaughton on the planning committee, and I found him a kind and caring person, and one with a very deep knowledge of planning. And many of the times I've been uncertain, I've been happy to follow his lead. Some members of my party have known him personally. Councillor Bates went to school with him. Councillor Hatton knew him very well, and their relationship went back some time. We've all seen him as an effective and hardworking councillor who will be much missed. We send our condolences to his wife and his family.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cartwright. If I can't see Councillor Eaves, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would also like to endorse what the others have said, particularly about the vast experience of Councillor McNaughton, which he was always very ready to share. He was commendably keen on building affordable housing. He was always courteous in his dealings with our group, and we would like to extend heartfelt condolences to his family. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may, I'm going to move on now. I'm sure that each and every one of us would like to say a few words, but I think time is moving on and we would like to get through this agenda. So I'm going to move on, if I may, to item 3, to receive questions from members of the public pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 9. There are 2 questions that we received, and I will now explain the process for hearing and answering public questions at Council. I will first ask the questioner to put your question, and I emphasise that this should be a question and not a statement. If you put a statement rather than a question, I will stop you and not invite you to talk further. I will then direct the question to the Cabinet member I judge best placed to answer that question. After the Cabinet member's reply, you have the opportunity to put a supplementary question, and this question must relate to the reply provided by the Cabinet member. If it does not, I will stop you and not invite you to talk further. The Cabinet member's response to any supplementary question will be provided to you in writing and will also be circulated to all Cabinet members, Council members, I apologise. I hope that is clear. So I'm going to move on to the first person, the question from Mr. Desmond. Are you in the chamber, Mr. Desmond?
Yes, Chairman, I'm here.
Would you like to put your question, please?
Thank you. My name is Peter Desmond. I live in Linfield. I'm a member of Fairer World Linfield, a community climate and ecological action group. My question: MSDC is a member of the Greater Brighton Economic Board, represented by Councillor Ash Edwards. The board has pledged to tackle climate change and environmental issues through its 10 pledges. These pledges include water recycling, zero emission fleets, electric vehicle charging points, rewilding, home water efficiency, low carbon heating, public buildings, and lobbying central government. On the 10th of October 2020, the Greater Brighton Economic Board approved a recommendation that member organisations do all they can to support these pledges through their existing work. What action plans and reporting mechanisms has MSDC put into place to play its part in mitigating the adverse impacts of climate change through these pledges?
Thank you. I'm going to ask the leader to respond.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you for your question. Mr. Desmond, to which I'm responding as the Council's representative on the Greater Brighton Economic Board. Protecting our environment is an important area of work for this Council, and on behalf of the Council, I was very pleased to support the GB10 environmental pledge being made by the Greater Brighton Board, and the Council has done much to support these pledges through our existing and planned work, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that this question gives to outline some of that progress this evening. On water recycling, the Council is supporting a project at the Burgess Hill Northern Arc development, which will introduce recycled water to 3,500 new homes. This will keep more than 60 million litres of water in the environment every year and mean cheaper bills for residents. And we're hoping to work with the regulator to try and see this rolled out to other new housing. On zero emission fleets, we're in the process of replacing the Council's parking fleet, which will have new electric low carbon vehicles to improve air quality, which is ahead of the pledge to move to 50% of vehicles to low carbon by 2025. On EV charging points, working again with Homes England on the Burgess Hill Northern Arc, all new properties at the Northern Arc will have capability for home charging. 1 in 5 homes with off-street parking will have fast home charging points. 30 rapid charging points in the car parks in the neighbourhood centres. Just as a few examples there of how we're using design and new development in order to implement some of those changes. On rewilding, we're currently piloting 25 rewilding projects across the district, where we're letting parts of our parks and open spaces rewild, and following evaluation of that, we hope to be able to roll that out to more locations in the future. On water home efficiency, we're working with Southern Water to support their home efficiency programme, which is also being linked to and coordinated with the Affordable Warmth programme. And on low carbon buildings, the Council has commissioned consultants to provide us with advice on how the Council can work to meet the net zero target by 2030 and how we can support others in the district to do the same. We're also working with 17 other councils in the South East to deliver the Green Homes Grant Scheme, and during the summer of this year, all eligible households in Mid Sussex will receive information to encourage them to apply for that government grant. The Council has started work on a new sustainable economy strategy to help us take forward our work in more detail and work towards the net zero targets, and that work is being supported by a cross-party member working group. In relation to monitoring progress, the Council's progress is reported regularly to scrutiny committees for consideration, as indeed will the work on the Sustainable Economy Strategy. And of course, as members of the Greater Brighton Economic Board, we also report the progress we're making to those board meetings as well, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Desmond, would you like to ask a supplementary question that has to be related to the response just given by the leader?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I understand that. Thank you, Councillor Ash-Edwards, for your response. My supplementary question is, considering these 10 pledges, what specific requirements has MSDC made of the organisations involved in the construction of the Northern Arc development in Burgess Hill to ensure that climate and ecological mitigation is set as a priority?
Councillor Ash-Edwards, do you wish to respond to this or provide a written reply?
I'm happy to respond briefly now, Chairman, if that's easiest.
Thank you.
Thank you for your supplementary question, Mr. Desmond. I think the Northern Arc development actually is going to be an exemplar for positive environmental action as part of new development. So in my original answer referred to some of the work that's being done there. I think the work on using recycled water actually is a pretty significant step, particularly being rolled out on a development of that scale. It's not something that's being done in a significant number of areas across the country, and that, you know, when you think about 60 million litres of water not being used because recycled water is being used instead every single year, that is a really considerable impact. But the Northern Arc will also achieve, I think it is a 10% biodiversity net gain. And so the council has worked really proactively with Homes England to ensure that that development is an exemplar, and I'm pleased to tell the council that it will shortly be featuring on the Country File programme as an example of good environmental and sustainability practice in new developments. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Desmond.
Thank you.
I believe that you will be leaving the meeting room, and thank you very much for attending. I'm moving on to question 2 from a Mr. Kenwood. Are you there, Mr. Kenwood?
Good evening, Madam Chairman. Good evening, Council. Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to put forward your question, please?
Yes, thank you. With the success of the vaccination programme at Clare Hall, should the NHS vacate the building towards the end of the year, would Mid Sussex District Council consider a further meanwhile lease to the community groups or an organisation in order to offer events over the Christmas period and possibly beyond, until such times as the results of the public consultation are known and the future of Clare Hall is decided upon? The next part of my question was, could the council provide the date of when the public consultation is to commence? But having consulted social media this evening, I understand that was today, so that's good news. But if has Mid Sussex District Council have any plans at this time for the hall for when the NHS choose to move out?
Thank you, Mr. Kenwood. I'm going to pass for a response to Councillor Webster, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Kenwood, for your question. The NHS has requested that the licence to use Clare Hall is extended until February next year, and of course the council has agreed to this. And I invite you to continue listening to the meeting on the council's YouTube channel, as I will be making announcements about the consultation being run by our independent consultants, whose appointment I agreed on the 19th of May following a customary tendering process. And I'm happy to take a supplementary question if you wish to ask one.
No, I did have one, but with the fact that you've just mentioned that the NHS have got the hall until February, I think that becomes obsolete. So I'll leave it there for this evening, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Webster, and thank you very much, Mr. Kenwood.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I now move on to item 4 on the agenda to confirm the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 31st of March and the annual council on the 28th of April. Have I got any queries regarding these documents? Okay, thank you very much. I can't see any queries, so I'm going to move on to the vote. We now proceed to the e-vote on the minutes. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now. We're using the yes, no buttons, please. The vote is carried with 42 votes and 3 abstentions. Thank you. So we're going on to item 5, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Do I have any? Councillor Ash Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. It's in relation to item 17, the exempt minutes. I declared an interest and took no part in the meeting on the 9th of December that exempt minutes relates to. And so similarly, I will declare an interest in the exempt minutes and withdraw while they're discussed. And so given that's the last item on the agenda, Chairman, I will take my leave in advance of that item. If that's okay. Thank you.
Noted, thank you. Councillor Porfer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I too was not at that meeting because of declaration of interest being the leader of Haywards Heath Town Council and Hurst Farm being in my ward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to vote. Members to indicate via the raise hand function, please. I'm not sure. I apologise, it's not a vote, that was to declare an interest. Item 6, to consider any items that Chairman of the Council agrees to take as urgent business. I do not have any. So now I'm going to move on to item 7, the Chairman's announcements. So, as COVID restrictions continue, we have been limited invitations for the chairman to attend functions since accepting office. However, we did attend a very enjoyable Horsham Civic Choral Church service. The music and singing was excellent, but attendance was unfortunately severely restricted due to COVID. However, moving on, I can see that my diary is fast filling as COVID restrictions are being lifted. I would like to take this opportunity to remind councillors that Mid Sussex Applauds is open for nominations until the end of July. The details are available on MIS and on Mid Sussex website. Please do provide nominations. And finally, I'm very pleased to announce that the Chairman's charity for my term in office will be Kangaroos Children's Disability Charity, which was established in 1994 by a small group of parents whose children attended Court Meadow School in Cookfield, which specialised in supporting children with learning disabilities. The parents wanted their children to be able to access after-school activities and opportunities that mainstream school children enjoyed, so they set up a Saturday play scheme for 6 children. Now the organisation has grown immeasurably and currently supports 227 members ranging in age from 6 to 35. Very few charities provide such facilities up to that age. Kangaroo's mission is to bring colour to the lives of people with learning disabilities, and their values are that they are family-centred, provide a safe and supported environment, have fun and friendship, push boundaries, and build independence, confidence, and self-esteem. In the years 2019 to 2020, Kangaroos ran 520 club and activity sessions, provided 1,774 hours of activities, amounting to 19,427 person hours. In my role as Vice Chairman of the Council, I attended a most memorable afternoon where I saw firsthand the immense excitement of the children enjoying the various activities that were provided by staff and countless volunteers. I could see the real joy in the children's faces, and their shrieks of laughter brought happiness to them, to their families, and everyone lucky enough to attend that event. I hope that you will agree that Kangaroos Children's Disability Charity is a small but really excellent charity for me to nominate, providing their service across the whole of Mid Sussex. And I hope that you will show your support to such a fantastic cause during my term in office. Thank you. So that was item 7. Sorry, let me just get my pages together. So we are now going to move on to item 8, which is a policy pay statement, and it is proposed by Councillor De Mere. Councillor De Mere, would you like to?
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yes. Well, as you all know, our pay policy is a legal requirement under the Localism Act that was passed in 2011 and defines the levels and elements of remuneration for chief officers and all senior staff. As noted in the papers, which I'm sure you've all studied, this reflects our current practice, and there is nothing new about this from last year. Also, as is noted, I think all the remuneration data is published on our website, so we are totally transparent. But I think I'd also like to advise all members that pay scales are set nationally by agreement, so definitely not within this council's remit for any kind of decision. And so briefly, I do recommend this policy to all members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spear. I believe this motion is to be seconded by Councillor Marsh. Do you wish to speak now or to hold your...
I wish to speak later, Chairman, unless anybody else wishes not to speak. I'll move it if anybody else wishes to say anything. If not, I'll move it.
Okay, has any other member have any question or comment used by the raised hand function, please? That's excellent.
Okay, then, Chairman, then I move the recommendation.
Okay, so the recommendation is on page 19. Council members are recommended to agree the pay policy at Appendix A to comply with the requirement of the Localism Act. Members to vote using the yes/no button. We now proceed to the e-vote on the recommendations. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now. Thank you. I'm pleased to tell you that there were 42 in favour and there were 3 abstentions. So the recommendation is therefore agreed. Thank you. So we are now moving on to item 9, which is the representatives on outside body. It is tabled the report, and I'm just asking for Councillor Ash Edwards to propose this item.
Thank you, Chairman. I formally propose the list which has been subject to consultation with group leaders, and I thank group leader colleagues for their assistance with that. Thank you, Chairman.
And the item is going to be seconded by Councillor Llewellyn Burke. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Llewellyn Burke?
Thank you. I'll reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any question or comments indicated by a raised hand function, please? I can't see anything, so shall we move straight to, unless you want to speak, Councillor Burke, or are you happy to go straight to the recommendation?
Happy to go straight to the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Recommendation in front of us is the council is recommended to approve the nominations to outside bodies listed in paragraph 4 of this report. Members to vote en bloc for all nominations. We now proceed to the e-vote on the nominations, which will be taken en bloc. You have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now. Fine, I can announce that we had 40 in favour, 2 against and 3 abstentions, but the motion is carried. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to item 10, to receive the report of the local returning officer on the result of the Police and Crime Commissioner election on the 6th of May 2021. Please, I'm inviting local returning officer Tom Clark to speak on this motion.
Thank you, Chairman. The Council is asked to note that the election of Katie Elizabeth Bourne as the Police and Crime Commissioner for the Sussex Police area. There is a mistake in the report, however. Her term of office is to May 2024. She only gets 3 years this time because her previous office was extended to 5 years. So with that correction, Chairman, I recommend that Council notes the election.
Okay, so before we vote, has any member got a question or comment? Please indicate via the raised hand function if they have. Okay, as I can't see anyone, I'm going to proceed with the recommendation on page 27. The Council notes the election of Katie Elizabeth Vaughan as Police and Crime Commissioner for the Sussex Police area. Members to vote using their yes/no buttons. We now proceed to an e-vote on the recommendations. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now. Okay, I'm glad to say that the motion is carried. We have 40 in favour and 5 abstentions. Thank you. So we're now moving on to item to receive the report of the returning officer as the person elected as district councillor for the ward of Copthorne and Worth. On the 6th of May 2021. I'm inviting returning officer Tom Clark to speak on this.
Thank you, Chairman. We're recording the election of Councillor Bruce Forbes, who's with us tonight. Councillor Forbes is in a by-election and gets an even shorter term of office. His term of office will end with all other councillors May 2023.
Thank you. Have I got any question or comments? Please indicate this by the raised hand function. I see no hands, so I'm going to move the item from the chair. And the recommendation is on page 29. The council notes the election of Councillor Bruce Forbes as district councillor for Copthorne and Worth. Members to vote using the usual yes/no button. We now proceed to the e-vote on the recommendation I've just read. You will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now. Okay, I can announce that the result is that we had 40 in favour and we had 5 abstentions. The recommendation is therefore noted. We're moving on to item 12, recommendations for Cabinet held on the 7th of June. This item is on the pages 31 to 32 of your agenda, and the item is proposed by Councillor Llewellyn Burke.
Thank you, Chairman. The Cabinet considered the year-end out-term position for the 2020-2021 revenue and capital budgets at its meeting on the 7th of June. The net overspend had decreased by over £500,000 to £1.4 million since the February report. And this was due to increased levels of income, expenditure savings relating to a reduction in the services that were required, and also a delay in works that were due, which was due to COVID restrictions. The interest income was much lower than expected, but the dividend income was higher. So moving on to the capital out-term position, there was an increase of about £3.4 million in approved spending against the revised budget. And there's a detailed analysis of this in the Cabinet report. But there has been some slippage, so the recommendations later on include one that says the 2021-22 capital budget should be increased by approximately 1.6 million. So moving on to the recommendations as written in bold on the papers. Item 1, the recommendation is the grant incomes to be moved to specific reserves in order to ring fence the funds for the purpose for which they were intended. Item 2 recommends that £108,000 is transferred to specific reserves as outlined in the Cabinet, in Cabinet Table 1, which was to do with cash receipting implementation, works to the Clare Park Pavilion and the AV system in the Council Chamber. Item 3 is recommended to approve the transfer of £100,000 to the Community Development Fund in order to replenish this reserve. This fund is very important to the Council, and we're very privileged to be able to have it because it grant aids many voluntary organisations and community groups. And my Cabinet colleagues may wish to elaborate on this in the future. Item 4, the balance of interest mentioned is to be transferred to the General Reserve, and item 5 is dividend income, which will be transferred to the General Reserve. The final, item 6, the 2021-22 capital programme, as I mentioned just now, needs to be increased to 1.6 million to undertake the works that this council would like to do and has agreed to do in the past. Item 7 recommends that the revenue overspend in 2020 and 2021 of 1.4 million will be met from the General Reserve. Obviously, this is not a happy set of circumstances that we're having to do this, and I'm hoping that we will get back to our 1.4 million or a figure approaching that that we usually get as income from our leisure centres, as happened pre-pandemic. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Llewellyn-Burke. The motion is seconded by Councillor Ash Edwards. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right to?
Reserve my right to speak later if I may, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. So I open up, have any members got any questions or comments? Please, if so, please indicate by a raised hand. Councillor Alison Bellett.
Thank you, Chairman. I was wondering if you could clarify whether if we get to stage 4 of the roadmap on the 19th of July, then all the restrictions on the leisure centre operations are removed and it has the option to go back to full capacity. Or possibly this is a question for Councillor Belsey. I'm sorry if you're the wrong person for it. Thank you.
Shall I pass that to Councillor Belsey or Councillor Ash Edwards?
Chairman, I think probably one for the portfolio holders to have a crack at, if that's okay.
Okay, Councillor Belsey.
Would it be appropriate? I'm going to cover it in my portfolio report later about July the 19th. So I wonder if I might save it till then, if that's possible.
Okay,
and then
Councillor
Bennett can follow up.
Fine, thank you. I cannot see any other indications of a comment or question. Councillor Ash Edwards, do you wish to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Chairman. Just briefly, I think it's just important that we all as members, we all have responsibility as full council for setting the budget ultimately. To just keep in our minds really the scale of the financial outturn report. A deficit of £1.4 million in a single year was perhaps a little bit less than was being forecasted right at the height of the pandemic, but still very, very significant for an organisation of our size. Unprecedented, but not unusual when compared with other districts. And we're in a position where we can, in this recommendation tonight, fund that out of the General Reserve. Clearly that can't carry on forever, and so we'll have to see as we continue moving through the COVID roadmap. That should result in some of those income pressures and cost pressures coming back into balance, but we're going to need to be very vigilant as we go through this year in terms of monitoring that and taking corrective action where necessary, Chairman. So I just wanted to just keep that on members' minds, and I'm sure it's something we'll come back to as we have better certainty and visibility of what the situation is going to be through this financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Ash Edwards. I'm now going to move on to the recommendations. They're on page 31. As Councillor Llewellyn Burke actually listed them all, I do not intend to read them again. So if I may, we will move on to a member vote on this using the yes, no buttons. We're proceeding to the e-vote on the recommendations that Councillor Llewellyn Burke has listed, and as on page 31. You proceed and you have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now. There were 42 in favour, so I can announce that the recommendations are therefore agreed. Thank you. So we're moving on to item 13, to receive the leaders' report. Councillor Ash Edwards, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, can I begin by welcoming Councillor Bruce Forbes to the council following his by-election victory in May. Councillor Forbes was previously a member of this council and indeed a former chairman of the council, and very good, very pleasing to see him returning and being elected to represent the residents of Copthorne and Worth. And so welcome back, Councillor Forbes, and congratulations on your victory in that by-election. I'm sure we all look forward to working with you once more. Chairman, the main item I wanted to report on was the council's bid to the government's Levelling Up Fund for Burgess Hill Town Centre. This is the only project in Mid Sussex that we judged to meet the LUF criteria, and we submitted a bid in order to try and unlock the development of Burgess Hill Town Centre, which is an objective I think we all share. The bid is for a total of £14 million based on 3 interrelated investments, adding quite significant value to the viability and vitality of the town centre and the wider area. So it would help unlock and accelerate the delivery of the Market Shopping Centre, which, as we all know, that development has been quite severely challenged as a result of the pandemic compounding existing retail trends. And so the bid will accelerate redevelopment in line with the planning permission that has been granted by this council. Secondly, the bid will facilitate further sustainable transport measures and public realm improvements in the town centre. Members will know the council has been successful over a number of years now in bidding for funding for sustainable transport improvements in the wider Burgess Hill area to try and ensure greater connectivity between the various developments happening in that area of the district. There are further projects that have been identified that would support sustainable transport measures in the town centre that currently aren't funded, and so this bid incorporates those as well. And the third element is a digital hub, essentially a co-working space, but better than that, to leverage the investments already made in the gigabit speed full fibre infrastructure in the town, and that again will help accelerate economic growth and job creation. A successful bid will leverage very significant amounts of private sector funding, create new jobs, and ensure the revitalisation, much needed revitalisation to that part of Burgess Hill town centre. And I'm pleased to say that our MPs are fully supportive of the bid and are expressing their support to government, and that is quite important under the Levelling Up Fund criteria that is the case, and decisions on bids are due to be announced by the government in September. Moving on, Chairman, in what is probably the shortest vice chairmanship in the council's history, I need to inform the council that I'm appointing Councillor Robert Salisbury as Cabinet Member for Housing and Planning with effect from tomorrow. I'm very grateful to Councillor Salisbury for agreeing to take the portfolio on following Councillor Northam's sad passing, and I know he's ready to get cracking to progress the work, completing the site allocations DPD, undertaking the district plan review work, and delivering the affordable housing strategies that we're embarked on. And Robert's experience and planning knowledge, particularly as district planning committee chairman, mean that I think he will be very well placed to hit the ground running and lead that portfolio. I hope he will have the council's full support, and following this meeting, Councillor Salisbury will resign as Vice Chairman of the Council and as Chairman of the District Planning Committee to allow him to take up that position tomorrow. And obviously those roles will need to be dealt with in the usual way at subsequent meetings once that has happened. But I hope colleagues will give Councillor Salisbury full support in that role. And thank you, Robert. For the last few weeks, I've been taking responsibility for the housing and planning portfolio. The main update from that portfolio has obviously been the public examination on the site allocations DPD that was held sort of on and off over a couple of weeks earlier this month. So the inspector has concluded the hearings following a number of days of scrutiny and public contributions from interested parties, and the inspector is now considering all of those representations and will come to a conclusion. And he stated on the final day a number of matters that he'll be considering particularly, and we would expect to receive a letter from the inspector setting out the next steps a bit later in the summer, and we will go from there in terms of the direction the inspector gives the council. Ultimately, it is the inspector's decision, and we will have to proceed in line with it. Thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions on those items.
Thank you, Leader. Has any member got any question for Councillor Ash Edwards? Councillor Eggleston.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Leader of the Council and Simon Hughes, the officer, for giving up some of their time last week to meet with me, a couple of the councillors on the Town Council and the Chief Executive to go through the Luff bid in more detail. And if I may, I know all of our officers work really hard, so singling one out for public tribute is maybe a bit embarrassing, but I'd particularly like to express my gratitude to Simon Hughes because of the depth of knowledge and detail that he displayed in that meeting. But in addition, his sheer, I mean, I can only say exuberance for certain aspects of the bid. And it was really welcoming, and it filled me with a huge amount of confidence about how this bid has been put together, and I really do hope it's successful. As a group, we welcome the bid for funding for Luff, and obviously a little bit of a vested interest as a local councillor for Burgess Hill to see the town being the target for that monies. I know some other councillors may well be a bit envious, but I would only say in our defence that for the town centre of Burgess Hill, you know, clearly we have experienced difficulty, let us say, with that part of the retail estate for some years now. And I'm sure we all wish this bid success. And if I was running a book on it, I think that we may well be. I have three questions. So if you would, please. Yes, I do have three questions. The first is that if the bid is successful, that just an assurance that there will be wider member and general public consultation and engagement with the project, so that we can get a broader buy-in to what will happen. The second is that an assurance that we will see a defined demarcation between the deployment of public and private monies, i.e. that the public money is directed and clearly directed to wider community, social and general economic benefit and is not perceived as a reward for private sector failure. And then finally and thirdly, that the landlord of the estate, New River REIT, will be legally required to deliver its share of investment alongside the deployment of any public funds, so that we are not left in a situation that we are currently left in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ash-Edwards, do you wish to reply now or respond at a later date?
Yeah, no, happy to respond, Chairman. I thank Councillor Eggleston for his question and the constructive way in which he's engaged with the issue, and I certainly welcome the support that he's expressed. And I think these things are quite important. I think whenever government is looking at these kind of bids, it is relevant that there is wider support for bids, and so I welcome the support he's expressed. In respect of the questions, so firstly, in terms of wider consultation and engagement, yes, I mean certainly in respect of the sort of newer parts of the bid, that will happen. There's existing tried and tested engagement work in terms of the sustainable transport projects, and new projects would form part of that. In terms of the town centre, I mean, that has already been subject to quite considerable consultation and engagement over the years, and of course now has a permitted planning consent, and so that part of the scheme probably wouldn't be subject to further consultation because there is a planning decision on it. But instead, in terms of the new aspects, that will happen. In terms of the sort of deployment of different parts of funding and delivery, I suppose really is the key question behind that. Whenever government enters into grant funding for bids, there will be very significant due diligence done on it and contractual arrangements put in place that will secure the bid outcomes. That's the key, really. One of the criteria for the Levelling Up Fund is that projects should be in a position to start on site in the current financial year. And so that is quite an important thing for the council in terms of ensuring the delivery on behalf of the community of the projects, but also the government will be looking for that in terms of the milestones for any funding being released. And I think the Levelling Up Fund prospectus is very clear that funding is being used to unlock developments that have been stalled, and the pandemic hasn't helped with many town centre schemes across the country, but Burgess Hill isn't unique in that respect. So the government is seeking to use public money to accelerate and unlock schemes that otherwise are a bit stuck. And that isn't new. Government does that all the time. And indeed, we've been successful in bidding for money in the past to unlock different schemes. And the council, if we are successful, will work very closely with government, as we would always do in these kind of situations, to ensure there is a robust delivery plan in place, and that the public benefits being bid for are delivered as a result of funding being awarded. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chairman. I can endorse everything that Robert Eggleston said very, very pertinently. I'd like to thank Simon Hughes and Jonathan Ash-Edwards for their time at the briefing last week. I'd like to thank the whole council, in fact, for the effort and officer time which they've put into this bid, which is considerable. And I know it's to some extent churlish to raise any misgivings, and I know you had to move fast, but I wonder, firstly, was anyone in Burgess Hill involved at all in the drafting of the bid? Because this bid must have taken weeks to prepare, and district councillors from Burgess Hill were only notified of it 24 hours before the press release. So I feel it's a shame that there hasn't been consultation. Consultation, I'm told now, will happen after the event if the bid is successful, but that's not really consultation. I welcome the due diligence assurances from the leader. I think we should all really agree that the state Burgess Hill is in is actually a big opportunity to rethink the town centre post-COVID and build for the future and avoid locking in high carbon housing. But what many people in Burgess Hill have grown to love now is the unique circular economy, zero waste small businesses, which we have around the Martlet Square, and the Kiln Community Centre, which you've recognised by giving it a grant.
Councillor Eaves,
Which is excellent.
a question?
Yes, my second question is, can we be assured that these small businesses will be relocated if the bid is successful, because they are quite unique? And thirdly, people realise that there has to be higher density residential in a town centre, and it's a good thing. It avoids concreting over the countryside, but nobody in Burgess Hill wants a 12-storey tower block steamrollered through when it is completely unnecessary for that tower block to be that high, and it contravenes design guide DG 32. And in 10 years' time, that will be peppered with air conditioning units. It will not be pretty. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Ash-Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. A number of points to pick up there, but again, welcome Councillor Eaves' broad general support for the bid. In terms of involvement, one of the things that the Council always tries to do when putting bids like this forward is to draw on projects that already have significant policy support, and therefore that members have been previously involved in. And for example, when you look at the strands to this, the town centre regeneration itself has been subject to very significant member involvement over very many years, culminating in members' involvement in planning decisions, and sustainable transport work too has been subject to significant member involvement, both in terms of the member steering group on the sustainable transport work that Councillor Llewellyn-Burke chairs, but also some of that work has been consulted with Burgess Hill Town Council members in the past. I think that might have been prior to the election, potentially might have been some after the election. I can't recall the exact timings, forgive me. But those aspirations have been subject to significant discussion in the past, and so when putting a bid together, that really is the starting point. Is what are existing projects, known projects that have some policy support and some member support that the council can bid for with confidence. And so we've proceeded in exactly the same way as we normally would on that. In terms of small businesses, there, I think we all want to see small businesses thrive, don't we? I think it's difficult for me to comment on exact commercial and contractual arrangements that are in place for businesses currently there in the town centre, but I think the points Councillor Eaves makes are heard, and I'm sure will be taken into account as far as possible. And it's probably best I don't get drawn too much on the final comment around sort of residential, because I think that's slightly in danger of rerunning a planning debate that has been had and decision reached. So I hope Councillor Eaves will forgive me if I don't get too drawn on that, because there is a planning consent there. I think all I would say in general terms is that the future of town centres is going to include more residential accommodation. I think that is inevitable as town centres change, and in many respects I think it's a good thing, because when you have more town centre development, it means more brownfield development, and we know that every new home built on a brownfield site is one less built on a greenfield site. But also the vitality of town centres increasingly is going to be people living in them. And when you think of many town centres, I'm not specifically commenting on any of our own particularly, but I think there probably are some examples where actually town centres can be pretty quiet in an evening because people go home, and that vitality isn't there because people aren't living there. And so people living in town centres I think is going to be even more important. And from a sustainability point of view, people who are living in close proximity, walking distance to shops and services and railway stations, things and employment spaces can only be a good thing from a sustainability point of view as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. May I move on to Councillor Marsh, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Ashworth, for your precise and concise report. Does he agree with me? You mentioned one thing that a lot of this happened prior to the 2019 election, and I was actually portfolio holder 6 years ago, which started this process. I know because I signed the lease off then. So we have done a lot of consultation, and I do believe we have worked with all the parish councils and town council, despite what you've just heard. And to get things done, we need more cooperative work and not as much adversity. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
Mr. Chairman, one quick question really, developing on the topic of sustainable transport, a clearer understanding on this particular issue. In particular, we've got the A2300 being upgraded to double dual carriageway, going to excite a lot more car-borne transport movement into the town, and I really don't know how much extra walking you're going to achieve from the statement you made just now.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Cartwright, I think this should be my last question for the leader, please.
Okay, I'll come in last. It's a most welcome bid from Burgess Hill's point of view, and we're very grateful for it going forward and for the work that's been done on it. I note in particular we're going to get a hub, and I think in terms of town centre redevelopment, that is going to be a good strategic move in the future, because high bandwidth is going to be the sort of business that we want to attract. But I do note that the thing is very contingent upon New River Right doing their bit. And I'm aware also that New River are involved in about 30 other plus town centres, all of which no doubt are moving into crisis at the moment. How sure are we that New River are going to do their bit in Burgess Hill and get on with it? Because you obviously have a relationship with them. Are there any signs that there's going to be some movement now? Have we got any form of incentive to get them going? Because as you appreciate, that the people of Burgess Hill are getting rather impatient about how the centre of the town looks and want to get some movement going.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ash-Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. I think probably the easiest thing for me to do is to just confirm to the council that New River are supporting the bid, and therefore have entered into the commitments that are required by the LUF criteria that include projects being able to start this financial year if the bid is successful. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on now to item 14, the report of Cabinet members, including questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.1. I'd like to start with the Deputy Leader, Councillor Llewellyn Burke.
Thank you, Chairman. Briefly, I'm pleased to report that leases continue to be signed for units at the orchards that we own in Haywards Heath, the most recent being for a phone repair shop. And a reminder, when I was asked to sign a further lease last week, that the Burgess Hill Model Railway Club at Fairfield Rec may be back operating soon, if it is not yet, and we can start to enjoy some of our hobbies, I hope.
Good.
Although the assigning of an asset to community value is a legal exercise, as members know, it's not one of choice, political or otherwise. I'm also pleased that the Watermill Inn at World's End has been designated an asset of community value. And the asset to community value regime originated to protect our pubs. So this is an example of what it's meant to be used for, and a success. And the application was made by the World's End Residents Association, with whom the council's worked closely for several years. Projects include the development of the artwork to make Wibblesville Station area safer and more friendly, and the significant works to the playground itself has happened, and pathways as part of the place and connectivity programme. And it really shows that we're working with the community, and the community is strengthening and thriving in these difficult times. If I may, I will address Councillor Bates's point about the transport infrastructure. We are spending about £20 million on encouraging a modal shift across Burgess Hill to enable people to get easily across Burgess Hill using cycling and walking. And the A2300, in addition to being dualled, which I think was always the original dream, that it would be dualled to enable traffic to get in and out without hindrance, does have bus routes on it. And I would urge any member or any member of the public to look at burgesshill.net, and you can read about the sustainable transport policy and the millions and millions of pounds that we are very fortunate that we've had through grants to spend on enabling us to increase the biodiversity in the Northern Arc and to make life more pleasant for the residents in Burgess Hill, in that they can get across the town more easily and have a bit of fun when they're cycling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Llewellyn-Burke. If I may, I'm going to move on to the Cabinet Member for Economic Growth, Councillor Hillier, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Just in relation to the local economy and the impact of COVID and the ongoing recovery, I just thought members might be interested in some of the following headlines. So 2,855 Mid Sussex residents were claiming out-of-work benefits in May, which is actually a monthly decrease of 10% to fall below 3,000 for the first time since April last year. I think we should be noted that pre-COVID it has been below 1,000 for many years. So 3.2% of working age residents, Mid Sussex has one of the lowest claimant counts in the country, and the lowest in West Sussex, well below the 7.8%, just to give members some context, which it currently is in Crawley. Despite the recent falls, the number of furloughed workers in Mid Sussex remains high at 7,800 in April, and that accounts for effectively 11% of the workforce. And this, I'm afraid, does match national and regional rates. Those numbers obviously will be falling as the scheme winds down between the 1st of July and 30th of September. And obviously there is a potentially feared rise in redundancies as that happens. Work has been continuing alongside our excellent revenues and benefits teams, helping our business communities access appropriate COVID support funding. And I am very grateful to that team for their outstanding support of our business community. In relation to this council support for the local economy, I can also advise members that the senior officers are now working on a new marketing and promotion strategy that will help them promote the district to inward investors and look to bring more jobs into Mid Sussex. We have a great deal to offer, and obviously we wish to make sure that everybody knows about it. And finally, the council is working in partnership with other districts and boroughs in West Sussex on various business support and training schemes for those businesses that apply. And that's all I have for today. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hillier. I'm now going to move on to Cabinet Member for Customer Services, Councillor Ruth Demir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Hi, my first report to you all of the new year, and I will try and be as quick as I can. But following on from Councillor Hillier's report, as the economy begins to wake up from COVID, our Rebs and Bens teams have been rather busy paying the restart grants, both mandatory and discretionary. But of course, these end at midnight tonight. However, we were quite proud that because we were so successful in promoting the grants, we received an extra 1.27 million from the government, and we were one of only 13 local authorities to do so. We've also been paying hardship grants to all taxpayers in receipt of CTS. And we're also working with Teljo, which is an interactive tool which helps us get to the people who need help. We've also, as part of our drive, to try and help people who aren't doing too well, we were chosen as part of a government debt advice pilot, and we've had the second biggest take up of this nationally after Bristol, so I think that's pretty good. Our council tax collection last year was good, 98%. And the other big news is that I'm not sure if you've seen that, partnering with the DWP, we've set up 2 community outreach job centre hubs, both in Bentswood, in Haywards Heath, and in Burgess Hill. And these go live tomorrow and Fridays. And I'm so pleased because it's initiatives like this, which are in the heart of all our communities, which are going to help remove barriers, and we can help more people get back into work. On the comms side, the latest issue of Mid Sussex Matters will be with residents from the 5th of July. And obviously our comms team have been rather busy promoting a myriad of initiatives, the Restart grants, Cabinet grants, our work towards the levelling up, and the search for digital champions. And once again, I'm asking for your help, because we're looking for champions to help people become more digitally literate. We're doing this in partnership with the Mid Sussex Voluntary Association and Balfour Beatty. Please, if you or anyone know of anyone who might be willing to work, can you help me, please, and email me. On more mundane matters, the ONS have told us we had a 97 response rate to our 2021 census, which is pretty good. And our thanks to our digital and technology teams and the customer service teams. On the digital infrastructure, which, as you know, and you've spoken about, Simon, that was signed off in Burgess Hill last week. It was delivered within cost and to really good quality. And because, of course, this will reduce the cost of entry, you can imagine the commercial market will be queuing to come on board, which is just brilliant news. The route through Haywards Heath to Crawley is 80% complete, and they will have finished whatever they do by the end of July, digging it all up and laying. But that, of course, will have to be followed by testing. So we reckon that will be up and running by September. However, there's going to be a full member briefing on all these details very, very soon, as well as the rural projects, so that everyone is up to speed. And that's it. Apart from, I would urge you, please, to use our learning pool. There's safeguarding training for children and adults, as well as the county lines awareness. I've done both those and they really are really good. So please, everyone, take them up. That's it. I'm happy to take questions.
Does anyone have a question for Councillor Demir? Councillor Eggleston.
Thank you, Chairman. It's not for Councillor Demir, but we rushed through Councillor Hillier's and Councillor Llewellyn's Burke, and I just wondered whether I could ask a question
Just
on
so
their
sorry
report.
you haven't got one for me. I'm
terrible. I'm terrible. So I'll
I'm
think
going
of one.
to cry now.
I'll think of one if you like.
Okay. I apologise, Councillor Eggleston. Please, who did you want to address your question to?
That's very kind of you, Chairman. I'm not sure whether this is a question for Councillor Hillier or Councillor Llewellyn Burke. It concerns the Welcome Back Fund. So if I ask a question, they can arm wrestle between them.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I noticed in MIS that a couple of grant bids for the from the Community and Economic Development Fund had been referred to the Welcome Back Fund for consideration. And I also note that the town and parish councils have got until I think the 2nd of July, this Friday, to submit their proposals for the Welcome Back Fund. And so two things. One is if the cabinet member could give an indication on when decisions on the deployment of the Welcome Back Fund will be made, because I'm sure some town and parish councils are anxious to spend some of the European Union's money, number one. And number two, whether what sort of, other than the fact that it's got to be a qualifying bid, obviously, what sort of criteria the district council is adopting to ensure that there's a fair allocation of funds across all bids from town and parish councils. Thank you.
Councillor Llewellyn Burke or Councillor Hillier, which would you like to answer?
Shall I start?
Please.
I'll start. I don't recall either us mentioning it in our reports, actually, but nonetheless, it's an important matter. I think the easiest thing, Councillor Eggleston, is if you pop the questions via email, I'll endeavour to get a response to you within 24 hours, because there's some quite in-depth stuff there you're asking about the policy around the fund. So I can't give you the exact answers now. I don't know whether my colleague, Councillor Llewellyn Burke, can. Thank you.
Unfortunately, it's an email, please, Robert.
All right, thank you very much. I'll move on to Councillor Eaves. Did you want?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's a question to Councillor Llewellyn Burke. I'm a big fan of place and connectivity, as she knows. I just wondered, you mentioned 20 million. On burgesshill.net, it says 22.8 million. Is that still the figure? In other words, are we up to time, and are we still, is all the money there? And can we expect the paths to be open by the school holidays? Because we were hoping they'd be open for the Easter holidays, and there seems an awful lot of delay, and yet nothing actually seems to be happening. So if you could give us an update, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you. I was rounding to the nearest sort of 20. So the money's all still there. The pathway, I can give you drop you an email about that and send it out to members. And if you've got particular paths that you're concerned about, that would be helpful, because obviously there's a lot of work going on. And as you know, there has been some storm damage as well. So if there are particular paths that you would wish to know about, or you think that are more used than others, then please do let me know, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Cromie.
Thank you. This is directed to Councillor Ruth Demir. After having conversations with the DWP earlier this year, I just want to say to Councillor Demir, thank you so much for getting the outreach into the Bentsford Community Hub. I've already heard from residents that it's really welcome in the local community. And I'd also just like to thank the officers and the council for their support of the Bentsford Community Hub, because it helps us create a true centre for all of our residents to benefit from. So it's just a thank you from me.
Thank you very much. And finally, Councillor Trumbull, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was interested to hear Councillor Hillier mention earlier on that the council is looking at an economic development strategy and a marketing strategy. Super. I would encourage the council to work with towns and parishes and ask them to develop their own strategy. And if we look at my own neck of the woods, for instance, Hurstfield Point, it must be one of the best foodie destinations in the district, I would have thought. We are exceptionally lucky. But what we are not doing, and I know it's down to the parish to do so, but what we are not doing is promoting that. If the council could work with
parishes and towns throughout the district to encourage them to develop their own marketing strategy, that would be most welcome. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Trumbull. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Hillier?
I think it's a very worthy thought. I will take that up with senior officers. It's difficult with these things. You know, we're trying to punch at quite a high weight. You know, we're fighting against the Birminghams and all this, etc. So having a strategy and having a promotion as a district gives us a little bit more weight. But I think if we can find ways within our marketing to pick out some of the jewels in the crown, such as the eating establishments in Hurstfield Point, I think we should do so. So I'm not being flippant about it. I think it's a point well made, and I will take that away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may, I'm going to move on to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Service Delivery for his report, Councillor John Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you also for the question, Councillor Alison Bennett, from earlier. I was going to mention about the leisure centres and give an update on that. It's been a while since we last met. So since we last met, obviously, our leisure centres reopened on the 12th of April, as we know, in line with phase 2 of the government's plan for easing lockdown. That time it offered bookable, limited capacity gym and swimming lessons, racket sports, gymnastics and climbing. However, from the 17th of May, we were able to reintroduce further activities, including opening the health suites at the Dolphin and the Triangle, as well as doing bookable indoor classes and seeing the reopening of our cafes. Now, since that reopening of the centres, feedback from customers has been overwhelmingly positive. Surveys demonstrate that there is a good degree of confidence in Places Leisure's management of the centres, and this has been reflected in strong membership sales and strong attendance numbers across all 3 centres. It was, of course, disappointing that we were unable to open fully as we had planned from the 17th of June, but we are now working towards opening fully on the government's new proposed date for the final stage of easing, 19th of July. We're also hoping for the reopening of the Cookfield paddling pool shortly after substantial repair work, and I'll be making further announcements on that soon. And I should say that I also know many of us have fielded questions regarding playground equipment, some of which has had to be removed in line with government social distancing requirements. The situation regarding playgrounds in terms of cleaning and making all equipment open again will also be reviewed in light of the proposed further easing of the restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we any questions for Councillor Belsey? Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm just it's just a point I'd like to say that I'm very proud of this council of all the work they've done in the past, which has meant we've been able to open our leisure centres, and I think the officers for all the work they've done, and also the staff in the leisure centres who have had a difficult time, and obviously the residents who have wanted desperately to get into our leisure centres. So that report, I'm really pleased, and I think there's many other areas in the country that are struggling to do what this council's done with its leisure centres. So I'd just like to thank the Cabinet, the officers, the workers at the leisure centres, and the residents for putting up with a difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Bates.
Sorry, Chairman. As you know, I am a user of the leisure facilities in Haywards and Burgess Hill, and I endorse what's been said about the comments made by users. There's certainly a big increase in recent weeks, and they're opening up more than the pool and the gym, which is what I use. But one thing I would say, and I would hope you've got these comments coming back, that the booking system and the hygienic protocol that's being adopted by the users should continue and has to be mandated, that we just don't let people turning up, going into the pool and the gym and just flooding it out completely. It doesn't work. A booking system and some form of hygiene, I think, has got to continue for quite a while, and I hope that will be the case.
Thank you. Councillor Belsey, do you wish to respond?
But obviously this is a section for questions. So in terms of Councillor Clark's question, which was, will I pass on thanks? I'll be very pleased to pass on the thanks to Places Leisure, and indeed the comments as well from Councillor Bates. And I know it's for Places Leisure to operate within the government sort of guidelines and regulations, but I will make sure those comments are fed back. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Cromie, please.
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to be saying the complete opposite to Councillor Bates. As a mother of a 2-year-old, we like to use the leisure centres, but it's quite unpredictable to work out what his mood is going to be like a week in advance. And so therefore I would plead that maybe we could get rid of the booking system and see people being able to come in and out of the leisure centre, because I think those with young children particularly like the spontaneity of being able to plan a day out depending on the weather. And at the moment, trying to book on the day or even a few days in advance is actually quite difficult. You need to know what you're doing in a week's advance notice, and that's not always easy with a little one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsey, do you wish to respond?
Well, thank you, Chairman. Just as I said earlier, it is with Places Leisure for the operation of the leisure centres, and they are following the government guidelines. But I think we can just, obviously we've got different issues and matters of concern, but we will just pass those on and ask that they are given due consideration by Places Leisure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. I'm now going to move on to our last Cabinet member, certainly not the least. It's Councillor Webster, Cabinet Member for Community.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I am pleased to confirm that the Council has today launched a public engagement and consultation programme on the future of the Clare Hall site. Over the coming months, through a process of dialogue with a wide range of voices in Haywards Heath and beyond, this Council wishes to identify how the Clare Hall site can continue to contribute to the vibrancy of the local community in a manner that is both sustainable and fit for the 21st century. In recent months, the site has been used by the NHS as part of the successful rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine in our district, and we as a council remain committed to supporting that vital community service as it continues to roll into next year. However, we do still need to consider the long-term future of the site. This is why we have convened this process to engage with the whole community on its future, and we welcome views and contributions to that discussion. Nothing is off the table. No decisions have been made. The future of the Clare Hall site will be determined in collaboration with the community. In the coming months, residents and local stakeholders will be able to participate in the engagement in multiple ways. Online Engagement Hub will act as the primary place to feedback, views and aspirations, as well as sharing past experiences and memories. In addition, several online and subject to social distancing restrictions, physical events will be organised at which people will be able to have their say. An independent group comprising representative organisations from a broad spectrum of the community in Haywards Heath will be formed to ensure a rigorous and robust engagement process is undertaken and that all voices are heard. This feedback will be reported to Cabinet prior to any decisions being taken on the future of the Clare Hall site at the end of the year. If you want to have your say, now is the time to get involved. Chairman, I wanted to conclude by talking about the Mid Sussex Awards, but you've already mentioned those, and I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Cartwright's comments when he mentioned the high bandwidth being developed. and I think technically that's known as superfast fibre, which is being developed by Mid Sussex. But I am truly looking forward to the day when our youngest councillors and officers are vaccinated safely at Clare Hall, and we can all meet together face to face. Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to take questions.
I completely agree with what you've said. Has anyone got any question for Councillor Webster? No, that's Councillor Chapman. I'm sorry, I can't see you on my screen, but please ask your question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Webster for his report. He mentions the word sustainable and that the future site needs to be sustainable. As Clare Hall has been used as an entertainment venue for performing artists, invariably these venues aren't sort of necessarily sustainable unless a local authority is to help, or someone is to help subsidise such a venue. So are the council ruling out helping to subsidise such a venue to enable it to be still used for performing arts? Thanks.
I think that's a very good question, Councillor Chapman. And I myself have actually worked in a performing arts venue that survived on a subsidy, and I do think that issue has to be very carefully looked at. And what I'm saying is that nothing is being ruled out and nothing is off the table. And I think any suggestion will be very carefully looked at, provided that it is submitted with the gunning principles in mind, which are a tried and tested legal way of managing community engagement and consultation exercises. I hope that gives you some reassurance.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Councillor Hicks.
Yes, thank you. If the Councillor Webster talks very much, emphasises Clare Hall site, and I just wondered if he could confirm that one possible outcome of the consultation would be that the Clare Hall remains open, and is that still a possibility in terms of the endpoint of the process?
Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I think that's a very good question, and I've said nothing is off the table, and that may indeed be one of the suggestions that goes forward for consideration. I would say, however, that the site has been recognised in the master plan of over a decade ago as being a site of opportunity, and it is a gateway site into Haywards Heath, and it does need to have additional facilities on that site that are fit for the 21st century. And quite honestly, no decisions have yet been taken. So I can't give you an answer beyond that, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. If I have no further questions, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 15, questions from members pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2. I have a question from Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, if I may just remind you that you have 3 minutes to answer your question, which will then be referred to the relevant cabinet member to answer. After the cabinet member has spoken, you may put one supplementary question, which must arise directly out of your original question or the reply. Any supplementary question will be dealt with by a written answer. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'll put my question. It's regarding electric vehicle charging points in Mid Sussex car parks. In April 2019, Mid Sussex District Council committed to provide 26 charging points in 10 off-street car parks. Now we discover at Scrutiny Committee for Leader, Finance and Performance that the West Sussex County Council Electric Vehicle Strategy 2019 to 2030, the platform chosen to provide these electric vehicle chargers, has run aground. A bidder was selected, but a contract was not signed, and the process was abandoned on legal advice. Scrutiny committee were advised that ownership of the underground cables was the stumbling block with the successful bidder. It was emphasised that electric vehicle chargers are a highway infrastructure matter. Since Mid Sussex District car parks are not public highways, the responsibility for them and what happens in them and in the ground under them must be a Mid Sussex responsibility. UK power networks now offer a simple electric vehicle notification process to design and provide suitable connections to the electricity grid. The selected bidder would design, install the grid connections, metering, cabling for the electric vehicle chargers, and it's simply not reasonable, in my view, to expect them to assume ownership of these cables and connections. Thinking about the reliability of the existing electric vehicle chargers and lack of penalties for failure of the contractor to maintain them, it's all very well saying that following a failure, they'll be put back within a certain time frame. This mistake was made in 2017. We need a carrot and stick arrangement which will award for good performance and penalise for non-performance. So, Madam Chairman, my question, will the revised inquiry be amended to achieve agreement with a selected bidder on the infrastructure ownership issue and reliability issues? Have Mid Sussex District Council revisited the original April 29 decision of the previous council concerning the number of chargers and their locations in the light of the West Sussex strategy, December 2019, after our decision, the failure of the bidding process in February 2021, the huge increase in the number of electric cars anticipated, the climate emergency and the funding streams ever changing from Her Majesty's government. And finally, when is it now expected that a contractor will be appointed and that new and replacement chargers will be in service in Mid Sussex District public car parks? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for your questions. This matter has been explained at length and on numerous occasions, and I specifically reported on this matter at a previous council meeting, explaining we were looking for a new electric vehicle charging point contractor. But I'm happy to confirm again, to take each of your points. Firstly, you are correct, Councillor Brown, that what happens in Mid Sussex District car parks is a matter for this council. Yes, you're correct that it would not be reasonable for this council to hand ownership rights of underground infrastructure within our car parks to the supplier, or to have to pay to retain them at the end of a contract. This is why we did not proceed with awarding the contract when this was demanded in the very final stage of the procurement process. And yes, the new tender, which is currently live, is very clear on the requirement that this and the other councils involved will retain ownership of any underground electric vehicle cabling infrastructure installed as part of the contract at the end of the contract. The original decision about the initial locations and numbers of the first phase of electric vehicle installation in Mid Sussex District Council car parks remains valid. As a council, we are committed to working in partnership with the new supplier, West Sussex County Council and the other West Sussex districts and boroughs to develop a comprehensive charging network across the district, including but not limited to our own car park estate. And we expect the number of chargers available to our residents to increase year on year in line with the development of that network over the lifetime of the contract. Finally, it is expected that the supplier contract will be in place in September, with first installation subject to final site assessments and work from UK Power Networks taking place by the end of this financial year, with the replacements for current chargers which have had operational issues as our first priority. Thank you.
Councillor Brown, do you wish to make a supplementary question which must be relevant to your first question?
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's pretty much answered my questions, and I'm grateful to Councillor Belsey for so doing. I guess my supplementary would be, is it why are we pursuing this with West Sussex County Council when in fact it's an ownership thing for this council? I just don't understand why we need to do this through West Sussex. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Belsey, we'll come back to you on that point. Thank you very much. We are going to now move on, if we may, to item 16 on the agenda. The motion before us is to consider whether to exclude the press and public from the meeting during consideration of the following items in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the said act. A vote is required to move to the exempt session before the exempt business is discussed. I am proposing this as chairman, and the seconder is Councillor Salisbury. So if we may, we have the motion in front of us. We are now going to proceed to an e-vote on whether to exclude the press and public from the meeting during consideration of the following items, which I've just discussed, and as I read it out, and you will have 30 seconds to cast your vote. Please vote now. That motion is carried. So I declare you have voted 37 in favour. We therefore move to an exempt session. The live stream will continue with a hold screen in place. Members will be moved to a private breakout room for this item. It may take a few minutes to move everyone, so please remain in situ. Thank you. Democratic Services will move the members to the breakout room, please. Okay, well, I was just thanking you all for attending, and once again reiterating it was nice to see Councillor Forbes back with us. Thank you all very much for attending. It is now 21:04 and closing the meeting, and I would like to ask members to remain in place until the live stream has finished. Thank you once again for attending the meeting. Thank you.